Self-reliance and Independence, the Prepper Broadcasting Network.
We have to hit the reset button and create a true culture of preparedness, starting at a very young age and filtering all the way up.
Hello everyone, and welcome to the Next Generation Show, where we delve deeper into the little things in life. Here we explore the lost art of fatherhood, parenthood, and fundamental preparedness for the world today. I'm your host, Ryan Buford. Colin has the night off tonight to do some studying or some other sort of thing, so we decided to give him a pass. He's actually going to be out for the next couple of episodes for his driver's license, so we're pretty excited about that, get him on the road, and he can terrorize all the other drivers in the region. But in the meantime, we're going to have some fun here still at the Next Generation Show. We're still broadcasting from the heart of the Pacific Northwest, and we do thank you for joining us. There's not a moment to lose, so let's get right to it. A couple of quick announcements right off the bat. For those of you listening to the podcast, we do thank you for the support. We thank you for those downloads. If you're interested, come on over and join us during the live chat by going over to PrepperBroadcasting.com. Get your own username in the chat. Or how do we do this? No. You have to click the Join the Live Chat button first. There we go. It'll take you to element.io where you can develop your own username and password and let us know what it is. And then we'll let you into the secure chat room. It's a great way for you to get access to the links that we might drop into the show or guest information. Tonight we do have a special guest, so you can get all that kind of information right there at your fingertips. And if you happen to miss an episode, you can always scroll up and see the previous information. Great conversations to be had in the background. Looks like we got a couple of folks in chat already. Volcana's in there, Kellogg, and it looks like Recuddle. Looks like we might have some new faces in there, so glad to see folks, and I'm sure we're going to get a few more as the night trails on. Also, special thanks out to the folks in Olympia and Seattle, Washington. Once again, top listeners in one location this week. Western Washington appears to be waking up, and it's exciting to hear, exciting to see. So, aside from all the other news and chaos going on over on the west side, it's good to hear that there's preppers emerging and interested in what we have to offer here at Prepper Broadcasting as a result. I did also want to get a special shout out to the preppers down in Mount Druitt, Australia, who came up in the number 4 slot of all listeners downloads within the last week. So that's pretty cool. If you're in Mount Druitt, Australia, listening to our podcast, and you happen to, take interest in our recent series on Aboriginal skills and Australian survival stuff, shoot me an email. I'd love to hear from you. Day or night, because it's nighttime right now over there. I guess early morning at this point. But anyway, yeah, thanks for all you listeners across the pond and around the world. It looks like we have a few new listeners in Norway and Belarus, so that's pretty awesome. Wherever you are, keep it up. We are all in this together. Over at Prepper Broadcasting, there is more freedom and more opportunity for us to be able to broadcast and podcast live and record. And that freedom and opportunity comes from members. The membership portal is available to you if you're interested in getting added content. Sign up, do your thing, and your support is like a pledge that allows us to keep doing what we do. It sends the funds that we need off to the website to make sure we keep the website up, and expands our bandwidth so we can maintain all the archives and keep podcasting like this. So check that out. If it's something you're interested in, if you want to show your support, go check us out at the member portal. While you're over at Prepper Broadcasting, you can check out the Next Generation show page, and over there you're going to find all of our social media contact information. And, of course, you can always reach me directly at PrepperDad@mail.com. All of our show archives are up there and all that good stuff, so check it out. Today we do have a special guest, so I don't want to hold up the show too much longer. It looks like I've got some chaos emerging here on the home front as Mama Bear shows up and the dogs are going crazy, but I'll close the door real quick and I'll get into this. Hold on one second, guys. Oh, never a dull moment. Anyhow, so today we're talking about Aboriginal skills in the urban landscape, and I wasn't really sure how to introduce this topic today, and I was kind of going back and forth on what would be a good visual, right, on Aboriginal skills that could be used in an urban landscape without giving away all the information that our guest is going to be talking about here in a few minutes. And I came across a video on social media, and it had to do with the fuel pipeline that kind of destroyed everybody's lives, or disrupted everybody's lives, at least for the last 24 hours over on the East Coast. And it was a video that someone had taken of a woman, I'm guessing an elderly woman, who, she probably wasn't too elderly. She was, I don't know. I don't even want to guess her age. I don't want to get into those weeds. Anyway, this older gal was at a gas station. She had some sort of sedan with a trunk, and she was sitting there putting fuel into garbage bags, and she was filling up garbage bags with fuel. Or not garbage bags, grocery bags. And so she filled up this grocery bag with what looked like about, I don't know, gallon and a half, 2 gallons worth of gasoline. And then she kind of tied the top together and then went and got another bag and was kind of, putting this bag that she had put her gasoline in into this other bag, and then was transferring this bag into the trunk of her car. Now, the visual of that is pretty astonishing, and really it's a little bit scary, to say the least. There's a lot of things wrong with that. But on the other side of that coin, it also has some interesting things about it. Some things that should be said about resourcefulness and being mindful of some of the other things that you might have a need for something like that. If you don't have a gas can, if you consider, go to the grocery store and grab a couple of grocery bags, turned into gas bags, I guess, you might be putting your life in limit risk to get that fuel, but, it's possible. And it kind of illustrates part of the mindset of a prepper, where you make the most of what you have. Now, this particular situation, I don't see why this person didn't have a gas can available if she was going to get fuel and knew she was going to get a little bit extra. I mean, I totally get a little bit extra. I usually top off my gas tanks, and then on occasion when I'm out with the pickup, I'll fill up a 5-gallon gas can or more, and just keep it on hand, especially in times like this where it's a little bit hairy. But I know better than to take a gas bag out there and try and make that work. So it kind of it's kind of like if you really are super desperate, there are things that are possible if you have the right mindset. If you think ahead enough to realize that this bag of fuel might be the only way that I can transport an extra gallon to my house where I have a gas can because I forgot it or something like that. Definitely hope that she made it home okay, because man, a gallon or two of gas in the back of the trunk in a grocery bag doesn't sound like a good trip home by any means, if anybody's ever had to smell fuel in the back of their car. What does any of this have to do with prepping at all? For the last few weeks, we've been highlighting the skills and traditions of our friends down under with Aboriginal and Australian survival skills. We talked a little bit about home remedies. We talked a little bit about boomerangs, and now we've got a special guest that we're going to be bringing on here in just a minute to chat about combining this idea of an urban setting where preppers exist, and in some cases they might find themselves where they need to think on the fly and develop something to be able to handle whatever it might be, a liquid or gas or whatever, and be able to pack it around or whatever. So the whole idea of surviving on what you have available with you in an urban setting is something that kind of it torments a lot of urban preppers. But first, before we get on with today's show, Colin isn't here to give the Crafty Colin's fun fact of the week, but I did track down something that was pretty cool. I wanted to share it with the folks in the audience. This is the Devil's Pool, and it's actually, the Devil's Pool is a body of water. Let me see if I can pull this up on my phone because it's taking forever. Sorry, folks. Where is it? At the bottom of this page. Okay, the Devil's Pool is a pool of water that has claimed 17 lives since 1959, and this is actually in Babinda Boulders near Cairns in, I believe, Queensland. Let me see what it says on here. Queensland, yes. And 18 lives since 1959, and it's kind of like a body of water that's surrounded by all these rocks, and there's a legend that's kind of a what do you call it, like an islander or a native legend that's saying that when this one particular tribal princess or whatever was to be married to another person, they wound up not getting married. They fled their tribes and escaped into the wilderness to have an affair. And the elders tracked them down. They were captured, and then the man was dragged away, and Ulana, the woman, escaped, and she wound up throwing herself into the devil's pool. And then ever since then, I guess it has, this particular body of water has this very strange anomaly where men seem to die. They just kind of get drawn into it. And there's actually a sign on the door that says, oh gosh, where does it say? Let me see if I can find this. It's actually kind of cool. It says, "He came for a visit and stayed forever." So be mindful of that. The dangerous devil pool at Cairns, and over in Cairns and Babinda, Queensland. Anyway, little fun factoid for the folks who are interested in some Aboriginal mythology out in Queensland, Australia. Well, with that, let's bring on our special guest today. So our special guest today is Rudy. Rudy is otherwise known as the Urban-Aboriginal in his YouTube and Twitter and other social media relations. And I, without taking up too much of the introductory time, Rudy, welcome to the show. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi. Hey, how you doing? Thanks for having me on. I was pleasantly surprised by your request, so I'm glad to be here, and I appreciate you wanting to spend some time with me. I've really into like wilderness survival and bushcrafting and primitive arts, Aboriginal arts, Aboriginal living skills, pretty much since I was a kid. And I grew up on the cusp. I grew up in Indiana. Part of my life was spent in northern Indiana in the urban landscape, just outside of Chicago.
Oh, wow.
And then the other part of my upbringing was basically off the campus of Indiana University. So basically, not too far away from Louisville, Kentucky. So basically in southern Indiana, where there was lots of creeks and wooded areas, and it's just country. I mean, when you're not on campus, it's country.
Oh, yeah.
And I was a free range kid. And what I mean by that, it was just like, you didn't sit in front of we didn't have video games like we do now.
Mm-hmm.
Internet didn't exist. It was like you watch a little bit of cartoons, after school maybe, and then you were pretty much booted outside, and not told to
till the lights come on.
Exactly, not told to come back until the lights come on, which was fine with me, because I was always into, I was just into the outdoors and nature. I was a critter catcher, so I was that kid that was always looking under rocks and logs for crawlies, toads, frogs, newts, salamanders, crawdads. Had tons of creeks out down there, and I loved playing in the creeks and catching crawdads and that whole thing. So that was like my upbringing, and I always wanted to kind of be the do the Boy Scouts or something like that, but didn't have the resources, and we were so in transition all the time that that sort of thing just wouldn't happen. So I was really just that outdoorsy kid, and so that's the moniker, the Urban Aboriginal, because most people want to take the term Aboriginal and they want to definitely associate it with Aborigine as it relates to the native people of Australia, when actually the actual meaning means to be an inhabitant of an original inhabitant of a place. Nice. And so born of a particular land or region, the urban landscape, because I can't pretend like, I lived off an acreage and we had a farm and 40 acres and that wasn't me. I was in between two worlds, so to speak, Yeah. And so that just kind of carried on with me. I've always liked the outdoors. We moved to the upper Midwest. I'm here in Minnesota, and when I was a teen, in my teens, and the region was just different. I was used to the flora and the fauna of a more temperate area of the southern. You know what I mean?
Culture shock, even, and temperature shock too, going up to.
Oh, absolutely! Oh my gosh! I mean, people complain now that the weather up here is a whole nother different thing. We've had lots of people move all over, move here to the Twin Cities within the past 10 years. Well, the past 10 years, the weather's been extremely mild. No, I wouldn't even say that. 15 years has been extremely mild. I remember, you go to school when you can't see, and you come home and you can't see. Mm-hmm. It's just dark, and then snow drifts. We're talking, snow drifts 2, 3, 4 feet high. Snow days. What was a snow day, right? Yeah. It had to be 15 degrees below with no, just standing. No wind chill. If it was wind chill and it was 15 degrees below, but it was like maybe 0 degrees, school was going on. Yeah. But it had to be seriously. A serious 15 degrees below before we had a snow day, and those were far and few between, just so that you know. Yeah. But I'm an avid, I'm a lifelong martial artist. I've been doing martial arts since I was 8. I will be turning 50 on Saturday.
Oh, congratulations.
Thank you.
So what kind of martial arts, if you don't mind me interrupting?
Oh my gosh. My first martial art was capoeira, which is the Afro-Brazilian martial art. Yep. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that was my first martial art. Then it was karate, and then judo, hapkido, Hungar Kung Fu, and then here I joined a gym that was affiliated with Dan and Asano Academy. And if people are out there that are familiar with the Dan Inosanto, he is one of 3 people that Bruce Lee allowed to teach his art. So that's my lineage. And I am an instructor underneath him. And I hold instructorships in Thai boxing under Arjan Chai Shirasuti, which is the Thai Boxing Association of America, and then under Guru Dan Inosanto, Filipino martial arts, and Junfan Kung Fu, which is Bruce Lee's martial art. Wow. And I was a career, I was a career bouncer for like 20 years of my adult life. I mean, that's just what I did, like 4 or 5 nights a week. I mean, I was so to make sure my stuff worked. That starts to go afield. But the reason why I bring that up is because this is really what kind of got me on my path to really rewilding myself, if you will. I had some senior gym mates that I overheard talking about this wilderness survival school, and of course they were talking in hushed tones. I was ear hustling, but I happened, but I happened to hear this, and I think I was probably about 17, 18 at the time. And I was like, oh, there's a school that teaches that sort of thing, and it was a Tom Brown tracker school. And I'm like, oh, okay. So I just made a mental note of that, and so, years went by, and then that movie, The Hunted, came out with Benicio del Toro.
Oh,
and Tommy Lee Jones. And Tom Brown Jr. was the technical advisor for that movie. Cool. And I ended up getting the DVD and kind of watching the little special features, and I'm like, oh! And at that time, I was well into my career as a web designer, web developer, and so I had a little bit of money to spare and some vacation time, so I decided to go out and do a class, because they're week-long classes, I think I've been out there 4 times.
Oh.
I mean, and you can go through different paths. You can go the spiritual route, you can go the bushcrafting route, you go the scout route, or you can do the tracking route. But they all intersect, and they, there's all, you can focus on one area or the other, but they all kind of play off of one another, so you get a little bit of everything along those lines. And I came back and I was just like, oh my gosh, it was like, I remember learning how to twist cordage.
Nice.
And that's all I was doing was just twisting. I was twisting everything, when I got home. I was married at the time, so there's 2 pivotal moments of my full conversion, if you will. Like really over into the deep end. Again, mind you, I've always had an interest in these things. That's why I went out there in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we had a fireplace in the basement. We had a nice finished basement. It was really, really nice house. Bad neighborhood. Neighborhood sucked, but this house was awesome. And it had, oh my gosh. I mean, I got stories. Trust me. Mm-hmm. It was a rambler, but not in the best part of town.
Yeah.
And it had a finished basement. It had a lot and a half backyard.
Wow.
And then 2-car garage. So it was beautiful. It was perfect for what I wanted to do, to practice skills and such. Well, it had a fireplace, and one day a squirrel got in through the fireplace.
Nice.
And the way that it was, the way it was situated was that it got in, and it went into the adjacent room, which was a laundry room, which had a deep freezer and another refrigerator and some other. But then there was like one of the main water pipes that went all the way to the first floor, and there's like a little space, a little hole, the way how they cut it out so the pipe could go through. Yeah. Well, it got up in there, because it was trying to escape us, right? So it got up in there, and once it's between, once it's in the floor or in the ceiling, if you will, it's like, we're not getting this thing out. It's like, it's not coming out unless and so my wife at the time was just like, well, why don't you trap it? She just says it nonchalantly. I'm just kind of looked at her. I'm like, what? Like, and again, this is kind of, I think it was like 2-3 weeks after coming from the tractor school, I think, or something like that. It's like, why don't you just trap it? And I'm like, what? And so I was actually working from home at that time, and the squirrel had probably been in the house like a day or so, and I'm just kind of fretting over it, like, oh, we're gonna get this thing out. And
especially when it's running around over top of your head.
Yeah. Well, it didn't come down. Obviously, it's hungry, so it's coming down trying to find something to eat.
Yeah.
Right. And so I would try to go and see what's going on, and would scurry back up into the hiding place.
Mm-hmm.
So finally, I was just like, okay, fine. I guess I'll try to trap.
Nice.
And so we, and then at the tracker school, you learn a few traps, just a few traps and snares. So I fashioned a Paiute trap, which is basically a modified figure 4 with a string,
Mm-hmm.
and I had an old wine box, and so because I wanted to live trap it, I wasn't trying to kill it or hurt it or nothing like that,
Mm-hmm.
and then we had some old pizza, and I used that as bait. And so I set the trap up on top of the big deep freezer, and on top of like a big cookie dish, one of those industrial ones you get from Costco or whatever.
Yeah.
And I set the trap up, put the pizza down, go into the other room, which was my work room, and I had barely sat down like 10 minutes. All of a sudden I hear, bam, and then it's all burning. Actually cost the thing, and so I was able to finagle it into a garbage bag, and take it up the stairs and let it go. And the interesting thing about it, when I let it go out of the trash bag, if you can imagine, like within the space of of the laundry room that it was in, it tried to immediately run into that area, even though it was outside. I noticed that. There's just certain things you pay attention to.
Yeah.
So I was just like, but it was free, and so that was my first thing. I was just like, oh, okay, yeah, this trapping stuff does work, and then
Wow.
yeah, it was like, oh, okay, yeah, exactly. I was like, okay, wow. And then the other thing is I got into tanning. And so,
Yes, I saw
brain
that on your site. Yeah.
yeah, and I go hunting from time to time. I wouldn't say I'm a hunter. You gotta know people, and you gotta know where to go and different things around here. People can be a little bit, dangerous out there. But I would get hides for habitat, and
Oh,
yeah, and that was a resource. So I'd get hides for habitat, and I'd probably get about 10 hides. And I got it down to, and I use the dry scrape method versus the wet scrape. I don't like the wet scrape method, which is the differences between the two is the dry scrape method is you string the hide up in a frame and you let it air dry
yeah.
before you scrape the the wet scrape method is you soak it in lye, or what's called bucking. That's the term, buckskin. And you soak it until the hair falls off, which is more of a more icky process, but you get more of the hide
Yeah,
because
it's
you can.
probably a lot cleaner too.
Yeah.
After.
Well, and then the whole thing is, again, mind you, this is an urban setting, right? So I got neighbors to my right and left. So I'm not trying to draw a lot of flies
Yeah.
and all this slop and flop and like, ugh. So it was just easy to string up a hide and have the frame, and I would lose probably maybe 2 to 3 inches on the edge, which is fine. But mind you, I still lived in a pretty not so good neighborhood,
Mhm.
so it kind of kept the riffraff at bay,
Well,
if you will,
but
to see a hide strung up on the back of the house.
yeah. Yeah. Especially if you put a sign
But
to the last guy who crossed trespass or
exactly,
whatever.
exactly, exactly. Put a cap on the edge,
Yeah.
on the edge of the frame. Yeah, exactly. But so the process with that is you take every animal has enough brains to tan its own hide, is the saying. So that's the term, brain tanning. So you'd take the animal's brains and you'd mix it with water, and once you've fleshed the flesh side and you've dehaired the hair side, you cut it out of the frame, and it's really dry like parchment, which is what we used to use in ancient times to write on and draw on
Hmm.
anyway. And then you'd put it in this water brain solution, and it would get nice and floppy and sloppy again, and then you twist it so that the emulsifying oils of the brain would work through the dermis and the fibers, and somehow through that process, it when you start to stretch it and work it dry, it keeps the fibers loose.
Nice.
And thus the smoking it cures the hide so that it stays uh, uh, supple even if you get it wet. If you do not brain it and you get your hide wet again, it'll go back hard.
Oh, I gotcha.
Interesting. So, and you don't have to smoke it for very long. The longer you smoke it, the darker it gets. Thus, when you see nice buckskin outfits and they're brown or dark, that's the smoking process. That's the smoke. Anyways, the brain solutions. If you don't have the brains, then you can use pork brains. So you can go to pretty much,
really? I did not know that.
Yeah, egg yolk. You can use soap.
Egg yolk?
Yes. Yep.
Huh.
You use egg yolk. Yep. You can use soap. Just regular old, like ivory soap, something like that, or pork brains, which you can get from, the Latin store, grocery market, or even some grocery market. Some of the local grocery markets here will sell it, and they're like $3, for a quart
brain.
or something like that.
Quart
Yeah,
brain.
yeah, and
a couple people at work could probably use those.
yeah, and you put it in you put them in about a gallon of water, and you just mix it up real good. And now, if you're working outside with this, the thing is that flies love it to death. Meaning, if you walk away from it, within a half hour you'll have just a layer of dead flies on top of it.
Wow.
And I would do most of my tanning in August when the weather here is nice and hot every day and stable, because I would do it outside. A nice fresh hide, you can do it inside, and it just smells like hamburger because it's a fresh kill. But if it's something that you've had to salt and let sit in your garage or attic or whatever, you can also put it in your freezer too. But if you don't have the space for that, you salt the hide and you put it in your garage or whatever, and it's sitting out there, it can kind of, it's not going to be as aromatic.
Yeah,
right. Very aromatic. Let's just put it that way. So it's better to do it outside. And so, when I'm doing this outside, it would attract. And we get a lot of yellow jackets. And yellow jackets, I'm sorry, they're just a-holes. Yellow jackets, just you got to be careful with yellow jackets. They'll fly in your drink, and you'll swallow them, and you get stung in your mouth, and that whole day. It's not.
That's happened to me before.
Oh no.
Yep.
Oh. Yeah. So, okay. So, I'm doing a new method to where I'm actually on the ground stretching out and scraping the hide. Normally I'm doing it on the frame, but I'm trying something different, a different technique this time. And I'm using the brain slurry, which is already attracting the critters. And I end up kneeling and getting the cigarette burn feeling. Just, I'm like, oh my gosh. Look at my knee, and I see the freaking yellow jacket had stung me.
Nice.
Now, I had never, and again, as much as I've been outside playing all my life, tromping around the railroad tracks, playing in the woods, rolling in the grass, playing in the park, I'd never been stung by anything, short of a mosquito or horsefly or something. But I'd never been stung by a bee, hornet, nothing. This was my first time, and I think I was like 33 at the time when this happened. Something like that. So I'm wondering if I'm going to go into anaphylactic shock, because I don't know if I'm allergic to the venom of these critters, right? So I'm like, oh my gosh, so let me just go wait by the phone, and if I start to feel like my throat's closing up, I can at least go call 911 and be like, so but it just burned. It was just burned, throbbing. I was, oh my gosh, and so, I waited for a little bit, nothing seemed to happen. It just burned and burned and burned and burned. And so I'm like, okay, I remember, let me go get some plantain, or Plantago major, or Plantago species. Plantago lanceolata is another species.
Other information. Hold on just one second. Let's we're gonna go on a quick break, Rudy, and when we come back, we'll pick up where we left off, talking about the plantain that you took and soaked out. So hold on just one second, folks. We'll be right back.
Are you prepared to be the family doctor in a disaster or emergency? This is the Intrepid Commander, and I'm holding the Prepper's Medical Handbook by William W. Forgy, M.D. In this great book, you'll learn how to prepare for medical care off the grid. You'll learn about assessment and stabilization. You'll even deal with things like bioterrorism response, radiation, and how to build the off-grid medical kit at home. Look, 2020 taught us a lot about the limitations of our medical infrastructure in America. Get the Prepper's Medical Handbook today at Amazon.com. Again, that's the Prepper's Medical Handbook by William W. Forgy. Medical readiness is an area that preppers often overlook. It's James Walton, host of the I Am Liberty show. If you're looking for a trauma kit or to build one of your own, visit ArchangelDynamics.com. They have a large selection of pre-made medical kits, ranging from EDC pocket kits to fully stocked trauma kits, along with a large selection of medical supplies, including tourniquets, pressure bandages, chest seals, and more. They offer free shipping on all orders over $99, and they also offer several firearms and medical training courses from basic to advanced. Best of all, if you enter the coupon code Prepper Broadcasting, again, Prepper Broadcasting coupon code, you'll get 10% off your first order. Archangel Dynamics is a combat veteran and first responder owned small business. They support us, and we want you to support them. All right, ArchangelDynamics.com.
And we're back, ladies and gentlemen, friends and family from around the globe. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for staying tuned. Great shows, great sponsors. We do have additional shows this week coming up. Tomorrow we've got James with the I Am Liberty show. Wednesday nights you can usually catch him. Dane D with the Gunmetal Armory on Thursdays. A good resource for firearms knowledge and skills. Then we've got rotating hosts on Friday, either Dave, the NBC guy, or The Strange Truth, or Michael Klein on Friday nights. And then Jay Fergie with A Family Affair, usually on Saturday nights. We do have a substitute in for a short time. Hopefully we'll get Jordan back and be able to keep this the other show right on deck. Maybe we can maneuver some things around and keep them on the Prepper Broadcasting schedule. Plus, Sunday we've got the Reliance broadcast with Stephen Menking. Mondays we got all sorts of different things going on. Either it's Medical Mondays, where we dig through some of the archives at Prepper Broadcasting and find some of the best medical tips for preppers, or we have a coronavirus update, or just a Preppers Live, a roundtable between the show hosts and some of the other names and faces in the prepping community. Then, coming full circle, we kick off the first round of Double Barrel Tuesday with the Patriot Power Hour, and then, of course, yours truly, the Next Generation Show. Great shows every night this week. Don't miss out, and we're looking forward to seeing what some of our new show hosts are bringing to the table. Thanks for helping us out and contributing the extra content. So we do have a special guest on. Before we left for break, we were talking to Rudy about a wasp sting, and he was seeking out some plantain type of plant. And I figured it'd probably be a pretty good way to transition into some of the other things that Rudy, the Urban-Aboriginal, has in his wheelhouse. But before we get into that kind of stuff, Rudy, do you want to kind of tell us a little bit about what happened after that bee sting or wasp sting, yellow jacket?
Oh, sure. Yeah, sorry, I'm being a bit long-winded. There's just so much.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah, it does. So yeah, I just made a spit poultice with once I found the plantain or Plantago major, not the banana, and the broadleaf plant, and you just chew it up, and I put it on the sting, and instantly, the pain went away.
That's awesome.
And yeah, it just went away, and plantain is an astringent, so it draws out. It's even known to draw out splinters. So, just as a note, yeah, it's also got allotonin in it, which helps cellular skin growth, or skin growth on a cellular level.
Wow.
Yeah.
And we talked a little bit, and you're probably not as familiar with this as I am, just because we do these kind of things in series and sets. And a couple weeks ago, we did a show on home remedies and how important it is to know and understand some of the home remedies that, you know, are available to you locally, like some of the plant life that might be growing normally around where you live and what the properties of those plants are. So it's pretty cool that and if you were able to find that was that in Minnesota when you found that?
Yeah, it's Minnesota. Plantains all over.
Okay. Because we don't have that necessarily up here, but we have other trees and other types of plants that have similar properties. And, so it's definitely, and a lot of those medicinal qualities were things that were known by the native peoples of that region. So like, in Minnesota, those things are like, oh yeah, you know, this tree, if you chew on this, or if you rub it on there, or if you add this or that, it'll help you, take 2 in the morning, right? Help you avoid the take 2 in the morning and call me, right? But I did want to talk a little bit. So this kind of brings up some of the other things that that kind of led me to bring you onto the show. So now I think we met on social media, and it was this is the first time you and I have ever really spoken, person to person, other than your comments or here or there or whatever. But when I started looking into some of the stuff that you were doing and some of the things that you were that you had your hands in, it was like, holy cow, this guy really is into a lot of different things, and a lot of them are the same kind of survival and preparedness type things that I'm interested in. And I noticed that you have a course or a couple of courses. Do you want to talk a little bit about those and what kind of things are?
Oh yeah, I'm a kind of web developer by trade, so I'm kind of a one-man shop. And I built my website, the Urban-Aboriginal.com, and I decided to kind of tinker around and see if I can make an online course for making both buckskin mittens, or mittens, choppers, if you will. You could use whatever covering. I don't show how to make the buckskin per se. I do have a DVD for that. But how to make mucklucks as well, or a version of mucklucks. And the reason why I did that was I moved them off of YouTube because I would get, to be candid, these are classes that I went to go take, so they cost me $1,000 to go take these classes, travel, lodging, yada, yada, yada. And, I would post them up on my YouTube, which, I do that mainly to archive, but I would get so many people asking me these questions and nobody putting anything in the tip jar, Yeah. So it was, I kind of have enough free content because I'm just really archiving the stuff that I'm learning or that I'm working on. And so if people glean something from that, that's fine. But then it got to the point where I'm like, I'm trying to follow your video on how to do this and that and the other thing. What's the next step? Blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, look, I don't have time to go through that with you if you haven't at least, $2, $1 maybe, for the fact that it's free and you're I'm providing all this knowledge that I went and spent money on, to get, I mean, so I went on ahead and just built my own sort of kiosk.
Nice.
It's real basic, I mean, it could be more robust. I should add closed captioning and some other things like that. But my main job does keep me busy enough to where it's kind of sometimes hard to get at it. But I have one on making mittens using a buckskin shell, a rabbit fur lining,
nice,
and mucklucks. And this is all from scratch. And then I have a DVD on how to do bow drill fire making, fire by friction using the bow drill method, and then the dry scrape buckskin method on how to make buckskin using the dry scrape method. So this is kind of my little proprietary stuff that I just kind of put out there. Yeah.
Well, that's kind of cool. I mean, and there's a lot of little things that I've noticed come across that it's like, wow, this is kind of a cool project, or this is a neat idea. This is kind of a neat concept, or it's like, wow, I didn't really think that, a little bit of cordage could, you could come up with sandals, or, what do you call it? There was not a sack, but it's kind of like a mesh bag, sort of.
Oh yeah, net bag, yeah.
Yeah. And stuff like that. To me, I mean, there are some things that are just not in my wheelhouse. So when I see that kind of stuff, it really kind of piques my interest. Like, oh, shoot, that's a great idea. And, this project mindset is all kind of, I mean, I'm interested in the projects and everything and that we do with Colin and stuff. And I like the concept of, knowing that I'm not the only guy out there doing this, that there's people out there who are really looking to educate others on how to do some of these basic things. And I guess, we have a few more minutes left, so I'm kind of curious, and this is just more, it's not like a hard-hitting question or anything, but I'm curious, what kind of room is there for Aboriginal survival skills in an urban environment?
There's all kinds of room. One, like you had alluded to earlier, in regards to talking about the lady who was using the gas bags as a carry item, right? Albeit it may not be the best way to do it, but she was improvising, and
right.
And that's really what it is. I mean, and I think it's that mindset of, I grew up, we didn't have money. We were broke, poor, and so we had to constantly think outside the box on how to get stuff done. And, for me, I can also, I can navigate around the sewing machine a little bit. I wouldn't call myself a tailor, but, I can make some things and I can follow a pattern. And that's, if I see something I want at the store and I can't afford it, I can just kind of look at it and deconstruct it, and that's kind of that's the way I look at a lot of these skills, and just starting with the basics. If you have some string, you could go to, I don't know, Pier 1 or whatever. You can look at a pair of sandals that's, at Target or something. You're like, oh, okay, I see how that's made. I can do that. You know what I mean? It's just, so you don't really always need to have the money in your pocket per se. The only thing it really costs you is time. Right. That's the main thing. And that's what you go into the store and having these quote unquote modern conveniences does, is it just saves us time. But back in the day, we had nothing but time. We sit around the fire, which was our TV. At the time, and you did stuff. You made stuff.
Well, and it's kind of cool. I really appreciate what you're doing, and I think it's pretty amazing. Do you want to, before we get off into the next section, do you want to share your YouTube channel, your handles, social media stuff, so that folks that are listening who didn't have access to the chat room can find you and connect?
Oh, okay, sure. Yeah, no, my main website is the Urban-Abo, and that's TheUrbanAbo.com. And I use Abo for short. I know I get a lot of people try to give me guff about it. Oh, that's racist. I'm like, most people can't spell. All right, so I'm just trying to be, I'm trying to make it easier for people who can't spell. Yeah. So that's just a fact. I'm sorry. Coming from marketing, I'm not trying to be condescending. That's just what I know. Most people don't read and they can't spell, so I'm sorry. I'm just making it easy, And the same thing, the same moniker at YouTube. All you have to do is either do a search for the Urban-Aboriginal, or it's youtube.com/the-Urban-Abo, and I would be at the Urban-Aboriginal on YouTube, or excuse me, on Twitter. Nice. So I'm on Twitter, and then I also have a Facebook group, the Urban-Aboriginal. You could do a search for that if you'd like as well. And I just post from time to time, nature stuff, and also related articles and little tidbits that I find as it relates to Aboriginal living skills and stuff. And again, it's just thinking very from a basic. Primitive doesn't mean worse; it means first. So
I like that.
that's kind of where I'm coming from with it. And if you have those skills, then the rest of it kind of gets easy, especially in a severe grid down situation. And by the way, I must say, Ryan, I love your book. I
Hey,
got
thanks.
it right away. Yeah, man. Pint-Sized Prepper Projects is a really, really cool idea. I do love the book. I poured through it,
Right.
at first as soon as I got it. Um, I think I ordered it from Amazon. And yeah, if you can also go to my website, scroll to the bottom, and you'll see an icon for Ryan's book, PrepperDad's book, Pint-Sized Prepper Project. So go ahead and get yourself a copy on that.
Hey,
You will be
awesome.
glad you did.
Appreciate it. And we're gonna have to. I've been threatening a volume 2 for the last 2 years, and I've just been sidetracked. So if we actually wind up doing that here within the next couple calendar months, I might have to pull some of your archives and see if we can incorporate one of your projects with your contact information and all that good stuff on it, and to tie it into the volume 2. Maybe we can kind of incorporate other projects from other folks.
Well, cool. That'd be cool. Thank you.
Moving into the next section, we usually do a pint-sized prepper project, and Colin ties into these. He's out today, and I didn't have one dialed in, but since we do have Rudy on with us, I kind of offered him up sort of right before the show, so we're kind of at his mercy. But I did notice that there was one project, speaking of the pipeline shortages, and if we look back into what happened probably 12 months ago when we were looking at toilet paper shortages, I happened to be scrolling through one of your projects and noticed that there was a method for making your own toilet paper. Would you like to share that project with the audience and kind of describe what's required to do it and how to do it?
Oh, okay. Yeah. Basically, you're just making your own paper, and I'm using for this project, you'd need a homemade, what's called a dickle, Dickle, and basically it's a frame that has a screen stapled or nailed to it,
Like
and that's
window
one
screen?
side of it. Correct.
Okay.
All right, and it can be whatever size you want. In my example, I'm using a smaller kind of like card size dickle, and then you would need another frame that's the same size but with no screen attached to it. And what you would do is you're going to make a pulp, and you would make a pulp out of recycled paper. And you're going to find that, you can wash paper, you can,
Sure.
you can use paper bags, you can use, you can use plant materials, dried plant materials, you can use, old paper towels, all that. Okay. So you're basically just recycling the paper. But what it is you want a thinner, as thin as you can get it. So what you do is you kind of wash your paper, you shred it up, and you put it in a blender if you have it, or you chop it up and you kind of whip it up. If you have a blender that works and the electricity is working, get yourself a solar powered battery or generator. I would suggest that you can get some of those kind of like under $300. But anyways, you'll want to make a slurry out of that, and then put it in a tub with your paper in it, and take your two pieces, the screen piece, and your frame is going to go on top of it, and you want to dip it into your bucket, or not your bucket, it is a bucket or wash pan or whichever, kind of a squarish type of container. Just submerge it and then lift it straight up. And what's going to happen is it's going to catch the fibers of your slurry, and then you just let that sit and let it, you can kind of shake it just a little bit so that the fibers start to intertwine and interlock. And then you will be able to pull that off gently, and you'd set it on top of a towel, a cloth towel, and you can let that sit and dry, and you just kind of repeat. That's the real basic way on making paper.
Right.
And I'm going to find the actual video here on my YouTube here. I'm going to share the link so that you all have it if my explanation doesn't make sense. But that way you all will have it, and you will be able to also get to my channel as well.
That's awesome.
So I'm about to put that in the chat there. And then, mind you, before toilet paper, people use cloth. I mean,
Yep.
Look up mullein, or Verbascum thapsus is the plant. It's got fuzzy, really soft, furry leaves. If you're out in the woods, per se, that'll work in a pinch.
Perfect.
So, yeah.
Well, that's awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that. And, some of the skills that are learned or encouraged through a project like this are basic resourcefulness, knowing how fibers work together and how you can recycle something that could have been trashed the day before, or even the month before. Something that was completely useless all of a sudden retains value because of your ability to work with it. Hey, we hope to keep these kind of things coming. If you'd like to see more of these kind of projects and support our work here, head on over to Amazon and type in my name or Colin's name or Pint-Sized Prepper Project, and our book should pop right up. Or you can click the link at our show page, download a copy today for 28 more projects just like this one that you can do with your family. And while you're at it, if you are checking out our stuff, go check out the Urban-Aboriginal. He's got some stuff that's mind-blowing as far as how you can do this kind of stuff and really make the most out of what you have available to you. I think for the final takeaway, first off, Rudy, thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate it.
No, it was my pleasure. No, thanks for having me on. Appreciate
Absolutely. And we'll have to do this again sometime.
Sure, absolutely.
For the final takeaway, I think when it comes to an urban lifestyle and an Aboriginal mindset, the combination of the two really just means survival. Your ability to take advantage of what's right in front of you, whether it's making a container so that you can get something from point A to point B, or knowing what kind of plants are around you so that you can heal yourself in the event of a bee sting or a bite or some kind. These are skills that we all take for granted, in that in many cases we don't know what they are. You don't know what you don't know is kind of a comment that one of my old bosses used to tell me. And it's so true because, and until you go out and really explore the potential of things like urban survival, or even, tracking, some of the resources that Rudy mentioned earlier, these are things that we can learn. And once you know how to do them, whether you're doing brain tanning or if you're, putting a poultice together or whatever it might be, you don't learn this stuff in school. But if you take the time to learn those skills, if you take the time to think outside the box, if you take time to analyze the way something's built or constructed and put a little bit of effort and time into it, you will add value, and you will add your, the potential survivability, I guess, in the environment that you're in, to where you need less because you can survive on less. Last week's show, we talked specifically about boomerangs, and we gave some designs and some killer ideas on what you can do with boomerangs to maintain a survival scenario and make sure that you understand how to throw them and how to build them and all that good stuff. So be sure to check that one out. Remember, if you missed out, you can always check our previous episodes on the show page or on your favorite streaming service. And while you're there, be sure to leave us a 5-star review. It does help to boost our presence, and it allows us to share this message with others. Special thanks to Rudy, the Urban-Aboriginal, for joining us today. Really glad to have him on. Check him out on social media, YouTube, etc., etc. Say hey, tell him we sent you. And next week it's going to be another hopped-up adventure. We'll see if we can't bring on another special guest in lieu of Colin attending, since he's got some sort of passion for hitting the road as fast as possible, which I can't really blame him for, especially in today's society. Well, that's it for today, everyone. Thanks for joining us on the Next Generation Show, and don't forget to tune in next time, where we explore another aspect of the little things in life that make all the difference in the world. This is your host, Ryan Buford, reminding you to stay informed, get involved, and be prepared. Have a great night, everybody, and make it a great week.
Thank you for listening to the Prepper Broadcasting Network, where we promote self-reliance and independence. Tune in tomorrow for another great show and visit us at PrepperBroadcasting.com.